Well, let's stay with the national dialogue and the continued withdrawals, raising questions about the credibility of the process. Political economist Moeletsi Mbeki talks to us from Cape Town tonight. Mr. Mbeki, good evening to you. Thank you very much for your time. Is the National Convention losing credibility here?
Yes, I think it certainly has a problem of credibility with a number of new players pulling out of the National Convention that's supposed to start on Friday. As you said, Action SA has said it will not participate, and so has FF Plus, and of course, the DA had announced a number of weeks ago that it is not participating. And then on top of that, the foundations that have been driving this whole process for the last year or so have now pulled out as well. So I think there are many question marks over the credibility of this project.
You've heard the arguments, I would imagine, for and against. What do you think is the problem and what needs to be solved for this process to once again gain confidence, particularly of ordinary South Africans?
Well, I think what we were promised as citizens was that this was going to be a project that was South African citizens talking to South African citizens under the leadership of civil society. What is now happening is that the leadership is definitely that of President Ramaphosa. It's not very clear whether it's Ramaphosa as president of the ANC or Ramaphosa as president of the country, but either way, it's the same person. So the question of who's driving it, it seems pretty clear now that it is being driven by the ANC president of South Africa. That is one issue. The other issue is the preparation really for this. You need lots of documents. If you are going to have hundreds of people meeting at a conference, whatever the status of the conference, you have to have a lot of documents that have to be distributed beforehand, whereby the delegates can read the documents, understand what they're about, so that they can debate the documents when they meet. I have not seen any documents being distributed for this national convention. So this seems to be an informal gathering at a huge expense to the taxpayer. So that is another concern.
Nomboniso Kasa, who is one of the eminent persons group, says it's normal for what is happening. It is normal contestation in a democracy. And if anything, it probably would have been strange if there were no dissenting voices. Do you agree with her?
Well, I don't know. You see, one can say that, to be incompetent and not to be prepared is good for democracy. I don't share that point of view, I'm afraid.
The other element here, Mr. Mbeki, is what has been framed as a fight between former President Mbeki, whose brainchild this national dialogue is, and the current President Cyril Ramaphosa. Do you share in that view?
Well, I wouldn't have thought that a former president fights a sitting president. I think this is a sensationalizing of the process. The reality is, who controls this process? Is it the ANC via the state president, or is it civil society? That is the issue. It's not this individual or that individual. That is poor journalism trying to create a sensation, in my view, and obscuring the substantive issues.
If it were the ANC that is in the driving seat, how does it ameliorate what is now unfolding? Does it instruct its deployee, President Ramaphosa, to pull back in terms of government's strong hand that people are complaining about, that it is being demonstrated here? What is the solution?
Well, if you remember, President Ramaphosa had said that the issue of the national dialogue was presented to the ANC National Executive Committee. So he is an implementer of resolutions of the National Executive Committee. So I suppose as far as he is concerned, he is under orders from the ANC National Executive Committee to implement this national dialogue on Friday. And until he receives another order to the contrary, he has no authority to take a different decision. So the people who are disagreeing with the rushed agenda are addressing the implementer, but maybe they should be addressing the ANC National Executive Committee rather than addressing its agent, which is the ANC president.
There are those who say a national dialogue, another talk shop. What is going to solve South Africa's problems is if policies, good policies, are implemented. And perhaps the key point to argue here is implementation of policies, many of them that are sitting somewhere and not being implemented. Do you think that the national dialogue is necessary as a tool to foster this unity within the country?
Well, you know, we have a governing party or a government that really is not credible, that is not operational. Every time there's announcement of unemployment figures, it shows more and more unemployment. So we as a nation are faced with a dysfunctional governance of South Africa. The consequence of this dysfunctional governance is the low trust the people of South Africa have in political parties and in the government itself. They have far higher trust in the private sector, in business and civil society than they have in political parties and in the government. So I assume that the political parties and the governing classes, if you wish, are desperately trying to build trust in themselves. But because they're desperate, they think every day counts and they can't wait for one more day. They're desperate to try and build trust with the skeptical voters, with the skeptical population. And so a lot of things are being rushed, a lot of things are being bundled. As I said, how do you hold a huge conference of hundreds of people when you have no documents that have been distributed beforehand? What are they going to be discussing?
Final question. If it were held in accordance with the wishes of the people of South Africa, let me put it that way, and it ultimately produces a result, what would that look like? What is it that this country needs to cure the many ills or the many crises that we are seeing playing out today?
Well, Collier, as you know, the South African voters a huge number of them are disillusioned with how democracy is functioning in South Africa. In the last election, 60% of people eligible to vote did not vote. So there's now the credibility of the political system in South Africa is in doubt. One of the reasons for this loss of credibility, as I said, is lack of performance on issues like unemployment and so on. But the other issue is that we have no accountable members of parliament. The CODESA had decided as far back as 1996, I think, the Constituent Assembly, that a constituency system of sorts had to be combined with the proportional representation so that members of parliament are accountable not just to the party, but to constituencies, but to voters. Now, the ANC has been blocking the implementation of this demand from the Constituent Assembly. And that's one of the reasons why voters are disillusioned, because they have no member of parliament who's accountable to them. Members of parliament are accountable to their party leaders. They are not accountable to the voters. And that's one of the critical problems of lack of credibility of the governance system of South Africa with the voters. And national dialogue, if it solves that problem, then I'm sure we will see an implementation. It would have to be implemented. A constituency system would have to be introduced. Then you would start to see more credibility in our political system and more participation by the voters. As it stands now, unless this national dialogue compels the government to introduce a constituency system, it actually will be worthless. It won't have any positive results, in my opinion.
Very interesting views indeed. A government that lacks credibility and trust of its people. Thank you very much for your time. Political economist Moeletsi Mbeki talking to us.